And now I would like to hand over to our friends in Brussels. There we have Catherine Gisela-Lanielle, the Deputy Head of the Cabinet, Commissioner Wojciechowski. And last but now first, Janis Potočnik, the Chairman of FFA, both and also Rice Foundation. Dobar dan, Janis, may I ask you for your opening speech, please?
Dobar dan, Heike. Thank you. And first of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Strange days, to put it mildly. And Catherine, thank you for joining me here in Brussels studio. As many of you know, we were not able to meet with you in Brussels at the end of March, as we have planned, for obvious reasons of safety. And together with the FFA strategic partners, we were forced to cancel the event. However, life goes on. And we are excited to see, or at least feel, so many of you here today. I have heard that more than 1,000 have registered to this webinar. Now that most countries have begun to flatten the curve of new infection, at least in Europe, and at least for some unknown period, and our public and private lives are beginning to open again, we could face an even greater challenge than the pandemic itself, shaping a lasting and sustainable recovery. The post-corona world today looks exactly like the old one. Farmers are back to how they have worked before, ships are filling our sea lanes, and your supermarkets will not have changed much, apart from the longer queue to get in. The world has not changed much. At best, we understand it a bit more. Unless we demand it is different, the recovery will easily allow it to go back to all the bad habits we embraced so warmly before. And we must demand it. I do not have the time to go into detail today, but in comparison to the hard sprint that we have just run to protect ourselves from disease, protecting the climate and global biodiversity from ourselves, it's a marathon. Given the extraordinary expenditures now laid out or proposed by our governments, we have every right to demand, not just as taxpayers, but as citizens and neighbors, that all of it comes with serious green string attached. In some ways, it is fortunate that the European Union has already put many strategies in place before the outbreak hit, starting with the European Green Deal and followed by many others, the Farm to Fork and biodiversity strategies, and now joined by the European Union Recovery Plan. This time, we are much more prepared to act swiftly and intervene deeply. We must use this extraordinary moment of crisis to define the next decades. The recovery must be based on the principles of circular economy and sustainability. It is absolutely necessary for the protection of our nature, homes, and lives. It is, or at least should be, unconditional. With it, we can also create the economy of the future. Where Europe missed the moment with the digital revolution, we can lead the circular, creating prosperity and opportunities for new green jobs. This would also put us back on a digital agenda, since it is an important circular economy enabler. The pandemic has shown us how dependent we are on our neighbors for food, for medicine, for protective equipment, for our survival. But it has also shown us how fragile current economic model has made our world and how unevenly its gains have been distributed. The food system cannot be immune to these challenges. Under the influence of a new political direction, hopefully matched and resourced by the Common Agriculture Policy, it must urgently make the transition. This moment of recovery is use it or lose it, and we cannot afford to lose it. The transition must make extraordinary and irreversible leaps today, in this moment of crisis. There is greater faith in and dependency on government and science than in at least a decade. However, we must be honest. Not all sectors of the food system will emerge in the same shape as they were before. Some, like, for example, livestock, will be probably more exposed. Those affected negatively must be helped. The transition must be just, or there will be no transition. But we cannot cling tightly to a vanishing past, or it will drag us into oblivion. One of the main reasons for the necessity of the Green Deal is certainly the fact that we are indebting future generations through depletion of our natural capital. We are privatizing the profits and socializing the costs, and have done so for centuries. We cannot leave the next generation with all the debt, both financial and environmental, without providing them with at least a promise and a solution of a better world than the one we are currently living in. They are rightly demanding it and will not be quiet forever. The last few days have shown us the power of sustained civil protests, and don't think that today's youth will sit quietly by. No moment of crisis is easy or comes with a heavy cost, but it is here, and we must act swiftly and with purpose. To do otherwise, to go back to the old ways that we knew were broken before, would be more than irresponsible. It is the worst thing we could do to ourselves and to the future generations. I look forward to today's discussions and hope that they help inspire you to become part of the change yourself. All this, after all, will benefit you as much as your neighbors. And this is another important lesson we have learned in the last few months. Good neighbors are important. I wish you a productive conference, and I thank you for listening. Now, it's my great privilege to introduce here in the studio Catherine. It was already explained. Catherine is Deputy Head of the Cabinet of Commissioner Wojciechowski. Welcome to the studio, Catherine.
Thank you.
Actually, the first question which I have for you is the last document which the European Commission has released. It has a very telling title, Europe's Moment, Repair and Prepare for the Next Generation. So it's actually in the title itself talking about that we need to reconcile recovery efforts with the necessary greening of our economy. Can you give us, please, a brief analysis? What do you understand are the most critical issues which are connected to the impact of COVID-19 when it comes to the food system?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is important to have, I would say, a shared analysis of the situation before we move forward and we put in place, the lessons that we have learned from the crisis. I think there are many lessons. First of all, you've mentioned already one, which is the interconnection of our agri-food sector and economy between the member states. So it's clear that food security is a European story. It's a European asset. It's a European success. That's very important. And I'm saying that even though, of course, we have recognized at the beginning of the crisis that some disruption at the borders, in fact, had made our life more complicated. And we realized that this is really important, that we have Europe and that we have free circulation of all goods. But for me, the most important thing that needs to be recognized is that in this unprecedented crisis, there has been an extraordinary resilience of our food system. That needs to be said. Not that it is a perfect food system, you've mentioned, and we need to look at the strengths and the weaknesses. But it is incredible to see how we've been able, in every corner of the EU, to have food in our plate. So not added to the health crisis, a food crisis, food shortages, which has obviously been a very positive outcome of this crisis. And it has not happened, I think, by coincidence or by chance. It's first, we need to pay tribute to the farmers, to the food workers, to the food stakeholders who've been able to manage, in difficult conditions and situations, to continue to produce our agricultural product, process them, transport them, retail them. So that's very important, and that has to be recognized. It is also probably showing how much the diversity of our food system is an asset and is helping in that sense. We have, of course, long food supply chain. We have also short food supply chain, and we probably need a combination of all that to be able to face any kind of situation. Maybe also one thing which is important is that this crisis has made us aware, maybe more than in the past, of the importance of food security. And the word is used now for many other kind of product and equipment, the open strategic autonomy of Europe, and that we have it for food, which we might not have it for, masks or protective equipments or tests, and that is very important, and we need to consolidate that. And as you said, of course, what we've learned is that the challenges that we had before the COVID-19 crisis, which are, of course, how do we improve the efficiency of our food system? How do we improve their sustainability, so the environmental and climate challenges that we have ahead? How do we manage, in fact, to address them while at the same time we need to recover? So not exclude the economic dimension, the growth dimension, and that's what everything that is about the European Green Deal, while at the same time we transform our food systems to make them more sustainable.
Thanks. If I just continue in the direction which you already started to explain, we have, by the way, quite a lot of friends from across the Atlantic also joining our discussion today. And you mentioned complications on the border. So on one hand, one of the consequences of the post-COVID, it's actually thinking about more local, but on the other hand, we also have clear commitments which are linked to the global free trade. So how to reconcile that? And could maybe the circular economy logic, which we have already incorporated in our thinking and in the Commission's documents, help in this respect?
Yes, it does, indeed. We need to, as I said, we need to have more efficient food systems. So the circular economy is also about that. How can we produce more, in a way, not just food, but also biomass? Because if we want to decarbonize our economy, we will need also agriculture and forestry. They are part of the solution. So we will, in the next 10 to 20 years, we will need to have more biomass. So how can we produce more biomass, including food and feed, while at the same time we save our resources, our natural resources, our water, our energy, our soil, and all we need to produce this. So for sure, that's part of the solution. It doesn't mean that it excludes completely trade, and I think it's important. We are a key global player. We are not self-sufficient for all our food, so we need also to import, and we think that trade from that perspective is good. But probably what needs to be further enhanced is how can we make sure that where we have maybe more weaknesses than strengths, I'm thinking in particular in terms of the feed that we import massively from some region of the world, not that we are going to stop from one day to the other, and we are not able to do that. How can we improve our resilience? How can we improve our autonomy? So it means making sure that while at the same time we continue to produce most of our food, but at the same time reduce the dependence of our food systems to external, external either input or of feed and food, so that we make sure that we are really more and more resilient in a context where it becomes very, very important. I'm thinking about the impact of climate change on our food systems.
We have one last minute just for the question, which is probably one of the critical ones. We all know that the transition will actually depend on that, how we will address the social question. How actually, because raising food prices, other negative effects, including job losses and so on, how to take care for the vulnerable populations and those on low incomes, that they are not too much affected?
Well, I think it's, first of all, it's important to recognize that the price of our food is rather low, but still it is difficult for some groups of the population to get access to it, and that we need to recognize. I'm not sure here that this is about the common agricultural policy, and this policy should address that. I think it's important to say that here it's about maybe further developing social policies, but of course also making sure that those who have difficulties to get access to food because they are poor are getting, better jobs, better livelihood, so that they finally don't struggle every day to get access to good food that are produced in a sustainable manner.
Thank you, Catherine. There will be some questions coming also from the audience, where we will both have the possibility to contribute to the answers. Now, this is for now from the Brussels studio. Heike, now we are going back to Berlin, please.